What if everything we've been told about autoimmunity is wrong? I'm Elizabeth Yarnell. After awakening partially blind one morning in 1999, a doctor told me my multiple sclerosis would put me in a wheelchair within 10 years. I refused to accept that as the end of the story, so I started investigating. Welcome to the Inflammation Investigator, the podcast that uncovers the inflammation lurking underneath your ailments. Because autoimmune and chronic conditions should not be viewed as death knells when they are actually alarm bells. I'm a traditional naturopath and founder of the Inflammation Academy. And in 2 episodes every week, we dig into what conventional medicine might be missing. If you're living with chronic or unexplained symptoms, this investigation is for you. Your body has been trying to tell you something. Let's start listening. Hi, welcome back to the Inflammation Investigator. Today's episode is going to be on a very unique topic that you might have heard something about, but maybe you haven't had that much experience about it because it is very new science. And this is plant cell technology, plant cell biology that is used in healing and especially we're going to talk about how it's used in detoxification for inflammation. So let me introduce you to today's expert. Her name is Jennifer Payeur. She is a passionate advocate for the healing power of nature. After experiencing a life-threatening health issue, she left a 29-year career as an executive in financial services and embarked on a journey of self-discovery, reconnecting with the inherent healing properties of plants. In 2019, she founded Nature Provides, an innovative plant stem cell company. Her mission is to educate and empower others on how these unique plant remedies detoxify, strengthen, and rejuvenate the cells in the body, bringing vibrant health to the individual. She wrote a book called Ancient Plant Wisdom: How to Improve and Maintain Your Health Using Concentrated Plant Stem Cell Remedies. This came out last year in January 2025. And she filmed a documentary called Nature Provides: The Ancient Wisdom of Plant Stem Cells that also came out in 2025. And that was in support of her mission to educate others on healing holistically. So, Jen, welcome to the pod.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you, Elizabeth.
I am too. I have to say, plant stems, let's see if I can say this. Plant stem cells I find absolutely fascinating, and I really don't know how they work and what they're used for. So I am very ready to learn in this episode. But let's start with, how did you end up here? How did you get here?
Yeah, how did I get here? Well, I'm going to start in my childhood. I was one of those young children that was super connected to nature. And, there wasn't a tree I didn't climb, a creek that I wasn't, crawling down into. And somewhere along my path, when I hit college level, trying to figure out, like all of us do, what is our purpose in life? What should we be studying? I ended up in finance because I was really good in math. And that decision, while financially it worked out really well for me, it really created this massive disconnect in who I was innately as a child and who I became, which was, somebody working in a corporate job, sitting 10, 12, 14, 16, sometimes 20 hours a day. I don't even know. My brain can't even make sense of that now, where I was sitting under fluorescent lights and not moving. And now, now they're saying not moving is the new smoking, right? So here I was sitting, high stress, on a plane a lot. And I had 2 major health crises. And it's interesting. The first one in 2008, I literally had a book fall on my head called Hands of Light. And I was being faced with a pretty dire diagnosis. I had pneumonia, bronchitis, shingles, tachycardia at 40. and
Wow.
also chronic fatigue, finally diagnosed after 2 years of having mono. And, that was just this stress, stress, stress. And so that's what led me down the natural healing world because had never been exposed to it as a child. We were very conventional in how we addressed illness. And so here I'm learning about energy healing and about plants and about herbs and about nutrition and all these things that I really had never really known much about. And then I ended up going to a 4-year healing school. And I did it all on the sly. So here I am still in this corporate job, still working these crazy hours, still with all this high stress, but something I think spiritually aligned me to my purpose. And so things shifted that it supported me being able to go to a full-time healing school while still working. And from there, I graduate from healing school and boom, I get this cancer diagnosis.
Oh,
And so that was like, okay, something is misaligned in my life. And I actually left corporate at that point. So that was 2012, left corporate. I had a full time healing practice. My life was in balance, low stress, was raising my 4 children. Life was great. And then I started having visions because I'm this intuitive visionary of wearing suits. And sure enough, 2 weeks later in 2015, an old boss called me up and said, I really need a strong leader. Will you come back and work for me? And I did. And 3 months later, I had stage 4 metastasized cancer.
oh,
So I went from, basically calcified cells in my breast to having cancer in my breast, my lymphatic system, in my liver. And so at that point in 2015, I said, okay, time for me to truly make a change. So I did finally leave corporate behind. It took me a while. I had a lot of identity tied up in that after being in it for so long. I had a lot of monetary idealizations tied into it. And I kind of just took this massive leap of faith and left. And I literally spent a year kind of sitting what I call in the dirty diaper of the unknown of, okay, now what? And I was visiting a friend, and her husband, who was a doctor, came out with this tincture. And just kind of by happenstance, he said, oh, this has saved a lot of my patients' lives. And I said, that's really cool. What is it? And as soon as he said embryonic plant stem cells, I literally felt like I was struck by lightning. I looked at him and I had no basis for this, right? But I still hadn't found my footing in whatever was in my purpose. And I looked at him and I said, what are they? How do they work? How do you know? I need all the details. Tell me now. Tell me now. And he's like, whoa, 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 calm down. So 3 months later, I went to a week-long training in these plant stem cells. The medical term or the scientific term is called gemotherapy. Gemo means bud. And I finished that class. And at the last day, the guy teaching the class said he was going to be selling the business. And here comes that same energetic bolt of lightning. So I got to the Honolulu airport. I called my husband. I said, guess what? We're going to be buying a plant stem cell company. And he's like, you are not going to any more conferences ever again. Every time you go, there's some wild thing that happens. And that's literally how it happened. So I kind of jokingly, but I think it's real that these plants found me because we're in a time of chronic inflammation, chronic toxicity, and they play a really significant role in helping the body heal for those two things in particular.
I find these plant stem cell concept so fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit about the history? Like, who thought about using plant stem cells?
Yeah, so the first recorded history goes back to Hildegard of Bingen, who was considered the first naturopathic doctor. And she wrote a book in 1158 called Physica. And in there, she wrote about the buds of 8 trees. So gemotherapy comes mostly from the new growth on a tree in the springtime. And so it's very similar. People ask me this all the time. What's the difference between a human stem cell and a plant stem cell? Well, they
Mhm.
have similarities and they have differences. The differences are the plant stem cell basically is a drain. It's a drainage remedy, a detoxifier. So it is going to go in and clean up the body. Human stem cells don't do that. Human stem cells focus on regeneration. That's kind of
Right.
the third step in what the plant stem cells do. The second step that they do is clean up the extracellular matrix or the signaling system in the body. So if you take somebody like me who went through this very serious bout of cancer, cancer is one of those illnesses where the immune system stops recognizing that the cancer is proliferating over here. So it kind of stays hidden. And the plant stem cells are really wonderful for connecting that immune system to the activity in the body and saying, wait a minute, there's activity going on there. Now I can go after it. I can see it. So now the extracellular matrix, which is part of our fascia, the whole network there, is now communicating effectively with the cells in our body. And then the last thing they do is they regenerate what is broken down in the body, just like a human stem cell. So, it's really fascinating how much, to me, these are somewhat well known in Europe, and they just never made their way here because it's a really intensive hand kind of touch process throughout the whole way, because all of these buds get handpicked in the Italian Alps. So there's a lot of intentionality that goes into the process. So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work done with love. And so, they have this beautiful biological impact in the body on this toxicity, on this inflammation, but they also have this energetic impact on the body because of that new growth being an undifferentiated part of the plant. It's got all of the vitality and all of the genetic makeup of that plant. So if you're familiar with essential oils typically come from one part of the plant. So you look at something like eucalyptus essential oil, which most people know
Mm-hmm.
about, comes from the leaves of the eucalyptus tree. Well, if you had that in bud form, you would have the leaves, you would have the stem, you would have the rootlets, you would have, if there's a flowering part of the tree. So you would get all aspects of that plant in that bud, in that tiny bud.
So when I think about our modern medical idea of using stem cells to help people, I think about people getting stem cell injections, say, into an arthritic knee,
And it's very expensive, right, to
right?
do that. And there's controversy about where those stem cells come from.
Right. And maybe
Um,
it's temporary.
and maybe it's temporary. And this is very different. So these come in a tincture in a bottle. So the
Okay.
only thing in this bottle is organic grape alcohol, which is what is used to extract the active principles from the plant, and then organic glycerin, and then the active principles. That's it. And so that is it that's in the bottle. So you're literally getting all of the life force of that plant in the bottle. And what they do, if you look at my before pictures, I mean, I look at least 10 years older than 10 years ago. I looked like my mother, and I just turned 60, and I don't do any of the, injections or anything like that. And it's from these plant stem cells because our skin shows a lot of the inflammation and toxicity. And
Right.
so what they do is they are literally cleaning up the body. And the difference between, like a pharmacological pathway,
Hmm.
pharmaceuticals are often derived from plants. I think the last number I looked at is about 75% derived from plants, but
Hmm.
they are either blocking a pathway or they're forcing through a pathway. So
Right.
they're not working with the body. The plant stem cells are actually regulating or creating coherence. So you can use the same plant stem cell remedy for high blood pressure and for low blood pressure. Because if you have high blood pressure, it will regulate it and bring it down. If you have low blood pressure, it'll regulate it and bring it up. So, and you can Google the plants from an adult perspective, and you can know what organ they're associated with and what system in the body. So we know artichoke and milk thistle are helping our livers. Well, the same is true in the embryonic plant stem cell form. They just have a completely different mechanism of action. So they're going at that cellular level and they're cleaning up the organ, the cells, and the tissue. So completely
And
different.
and the type of tree that the buds come from influence the type of healing that happens from these plant stem cells.
Absolutely. 100%. So you can look at the plant and you can kind of tell what it does when you look at a certain tree. So, for example, one of my favorite plants is called cedar of Lebanon. It's 1,000-year-old tree. And it
Mm.
comes, the one that we use in plant stem cell form comes from the young shoots of that tree. It is good for aging skin. So you think about 1,000-year-old tree, it's an old tree. So it is going to help with dryness in the body. It will help with inflammation in the body. It will help with the immune system, and it will especially help with the skin. So,
Very
but
interesting. You don't put it on topically, you take it internally.
most of them you take internally. You can use them topically. And I've had people working through cancer that have
Uh-huh.
used some of the cancer remedies topically as well. And they do work both. They do work in both ways. It's just that they have alcohol in them. So, for somebody who wants to use it topically, it can be a little drying that you
Hmm.
wouldn't have internally.
And you could probably just put another lotion on top of that or
Correct.
something, or
Yeah,
mix it in.
a lot of people will use like castor oil, especially like with
Hmm.
like mistletoe is one that we have in plant stem cell form, and we have something called betulinic concentrate that is known to create apoptosis of cancer cells and leave healthy cells alone. So we do have people that use that topically as well.
Very interesting. So there's not like one formula that everybody should take for longevity or for health.
Well, there are. So it really depends on where you are in your health journey.
Okay.
Right now, when I look at us as the human race, we are all in fight or flight, right? Our nervous systems are jacked. We all are dealing with some level of inflammation and toxicity. And then we all, also we have liver issues, we have nervous system issues. Those two at a minimum, and then most of us have some type of lymphatic issue because we're still not moving enough. And
Right.
so I tell everybody, even if you're healthy, those are the three areas I would work on. You can use these preventatively and you can use them as maintenance. So if you have zero health issues, I think everybody still needs to detoxify their liver because our food supply, our air supply, our water, none of it is that healthy for us right now. I just got back from a month in Europe. And I mean, I learned some things that were fascinating. So, for example, in Italy, it is illegal to serve tap water in a restaurant. Period. The end.
Oh,
All the water has to be filtered. And you can tell, you taste it and you don't taste the chlorine. You don't taste, the gunk in it that we have here.
right. Right.
And GMOs are completely illegal there.
Right.
So you look at some of that, and we are dealing with that here in North America on a pretty heightened level. You just have to pick up a piece of food and you read the label, and usually it has ingredients you cannot pronounce, or it has a ton of sugar, or it's genetically modified. And so, for me, that means we all have some kind of liver congestion, liver issues. And then the lymph, again, not moving. So you have plants like sweet chestnut that are wonderful for the lymphatic system to just keep things in flow. And then we have several plants for the nervous system: California poppy, passion flower, linden tree, which is one of my all time favorite plants to use, especially with kids. Our kids have high levels of anxiety now.
They do.
So for somebody who has zero health issues, that would be, where I would start with those three systems. And for somebody who has health issues, then I would add specific plants to work on those specific issues.
And are these things that you take every day?
I do, yes, especially because of my history. But
Hmm.
to me, they just keep me vital, young on the inside, and healthy. So I don't get sick, and I have a lot of energy. So I work with a lot of plants because I want to really understand how that plant works in the body. And so
Hmm.
in my book, I do have an energetic. So I have like a mini materia medica in the center of the book to help people get to know these plants. And then I have a little energetic component, which is my experience with the plant when I sit with it.
Yeah, wow. That seems very comprehensive. Do you add is it a dropper? Do you add the liquid to like a glass of water or something?
You can, or you can take them directly. So it's best to take directly. They're like 95% bioavailable because of how they're
Ah,
made.
uh-huh.
I think it's important to just share that because it is pretty magical. So all of those buds are handpicked in the springtime. So from mid-February to the beginning of June, those buds are picked from the trees when the trees begin to, go into their springtime renewal. And then from there, within 2 hours of picking that little teeny bud, it has to go into the organic grape alcohol and glycerin. And every day it's agitated. So you think about like a homeopathic remedy where they succuss it. So it's agitated to keep the active principles continuing to release from the plant buds. Then after that, the plant material that's remaining that hasn't broken down gets pulled out, pressed, burned, and then the cell salts from that go back into the tincture. So that's called spagyrics. It's an
Oh,
ancient alchemical process. And in there, what that's doing is it's adding something called carbon nanodots. It's adding light to the tincture. Like literally, our scientific director walked by his lab one day and one of the test tubes lit up this fluorescent blue, kind of like in your window, that deep, deep blue. And he said, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And he put it under the microscope in the lab and he saw these dodecahedron shapes. So that's like a soccer ball. And so he kept studying it and he said, "Wow, look, it's got these sparks of light." And I think that is where the vitality comes in with these plant buds. And then the tincture is spiralized about 1,000 times a day. And then it's ready for using. So there's just so much intentionality in the process, as I said. And it's not like a machine is doing all this. This is people doing this. So it's kind of like that's why I called my book Ancient Plant Wisdom. It's the ancient, what the ancients knew, what our grandparents knew, and why they weren't as sick as we are.
right, right. So tell me what kinds of treatments are in your range of products.
I mean, pretty much everything. So there are plants that help the digestive system, like fig is fabulous
Hmm.
for the digestive system. Lemon tree, which comes from the embryonic bark of the lemon tree. So all of these come from the new growth on the plant. Those are both fabulous for digestion. Maidenhair tree, which is ginkgo biloba, and periwinkle, phenomenal for the brain. So one of the things I started doing about 3 years ago, I got a download to start taking holistic practitioners to Italy to go see this whole, experience this and see the whole process. And our scientific director was talking about how if you have family members, like a grandfather who had dementia or an uncle, you can actually take these preventatively because they are working on your epigenetics. So they're cleaning up the epigenetics and they're working on the microRNA in the body. So plants for the brain, plants for the nervous system, the heart, cardiovascular system, like hawthorn, which is one of the best, lilac. Like you don't think about lilac, such a beautiful plant, is fabulous for the arteries, for cleaning up the arteries in the body. There are plants for the musculoskeletal system, like mountain pine is fabulous, Virginia creeper for the connective tissue, ash. So there we have about 80 single trees that we work with in total, and each one is connected to either an organ or a system in the body. And then we did create some combinations to make it easy and affordable for people. So we have, like a tincture called Calm Heart that's good for any arrhythmias in the heart, any heart issues, cleaning up the heart. I have a membership and I meet with them. And last night I had somebody come on who was on a statin. He'd been on a statin
Hmm.
for a couple of years. And he said, "I really want to get off this because I'm angry and I'm not me." And so 2 months later of taking hawthorn and olive and lilac, he said, "My HDL is the best it's ever been in my life." And he's 64. He said, "My LDL is the lowest it's ever been in my life." And he said, "And my triglycerides are the best they've ever been in 2 months." So, just like even I'm like shocked. It was like, wow, that was fast. And he had had a heart attack, so I think that we're at a time now where several years ago, what we went through in the world with everything, that people are opening back up to nature, to natural ways to bring healing into our lives. And, I love that you focus on inflammation because I do believe we are an inflamed nation, right? Not just physically inflamed, but emotionally inflamed, right? We're short tempered
Yes.
and all of
Or
that.
violent.
Violence, we're divided. And so to me, I think a big part of what came to me in this massive pivot in my life was teach people to come back to nature, bring people back to what we know is working with our bodies, with our systems, rather than fighting against it or blocking something. Because over time, when you keep blocking a pathway in the body, it will shut down, it will stop working. We know that through the colon, right?
Right.
When people constantly are, constipated and they're taking drugs over time, the colon's like, okay, I'll just sit here and let the drug do the work for me. I don't have to work.
Right. Right. It atrophies.
Yes.
Yes. We see the same thing happens when people take animal-based digestive enzymes, right? Like bovine enzymes. Then your own enzyme production decreases. Your body just lets it take over. Whereas
Right.
if you do plant-based digestive enzymes, that doesn't happen.
Right.
It
And
just augments.
plants work so well with the human body. And if you go back, I did a 2-year study with the 13 indigenous grandmothers as part of my massive pivot in 2012. And they taught me that plants were around long before humans. Like they really are our elders. And one of the things that they shared is that plants know what's coming about 10 years before humans do. And they
Uh-huh.
adapt, right? So if there's a drought, they're always adapting. So they're
Mhm.
adaptogenic in nature. And that's one of the things that I love about working with plants is a plant doesn't just work on one part of the body, it works on the system. It kind of is like a symphony where it's trying to bring the conductor and all of the pieces together so that they're all in coherence.
I often see people, they're taking an extract of a plant, like D-mannose instead of the cranberry, for example,
Mm-hmm.
for urinary tract issues. And that just feels so wrong to me because
Mm-hmm.
we don't even know all the ways D-mannose is just one of the elements in the whole cranberry. And
Right.
nature created the cranberry to have D-mannose and a bunch of other cofactors in it that all work synchronistically.
Right. So why do we want to isolate something
Why do
when
we
we
want
can
to
have the
isolate?
whole part of the plant, the whole plant in all of its wisdom?
And when we isolate, we
Excuse me.
were dismissing things we don't even know exist.
Correct. Yeah. So, like berberine is another example, right? Berberine is
Yep.
fabulous for insulin and blood sugar, but barberry is the plant that it's extracted from. So, why not take barberry instead of, taking a
Right.
piece?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So if people are interested in exploring more um, about these stem cells, and I'm not saying this to wrap things up because I'm not wrapping things up yet. But I like, would they go to your website? How would they learn more about this?
The best thing to do would be to go to the website. It's nature-provides.com. If you forget the
Uh-huh.
hyphen, you will end up in the UK. So you need that little hyphen in there. And the best thing to do is to watch the documentary. We have 2 episodes. The first episode is about 58 minutes. It's a little bit about the journey that I went through with my health and a lot about what are these things? How do they work? Most of it was filmed in Italy. So you also have beautiful landscapes of Italy. And then the second episode came out about 2 weeks ago. And that really is about the science because that is a question that gets asked a lot is, well, show me the science on this. And
Hmm.
so we really wanted to do that. And we filmed that last July. And so that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And that's on the site as well. And that's much shorter. It's about 45 minutes. And it's really our scientific director who founded these about 36 years ago in Italy. And all of these plants that we use grow in the Italian Alps, which is, I did not know this until we did the documentary, about 90% of all herbs come from that area. That is the
Like
most pristine
originally.
originally. That is the most pristine area in our planet. No heavy metals. Nothing is sprayed there. So there are no herbicides, pesticides, nothing. And these plants grow literally in the wild. So before I went, I'm a gardener and I thought, oh, these will be, cultivated, these trees grown, kind of like what we have here in North Carolina. No, not at all. They're literally in a forest and you have to go find where that tree is and see the bud. And there's only a short window when that bud is ready to be picked. If it opens up all the way, it's too late. If it's too tight, it's not ready. And so literally there are botanists in Italy who go and map out the entire territory based on a forecast that we give. And they say, okay, this is where there's a silver birch tree. There's one over here. And they actually have to go check, when they kind of know it's going to be opening and say, oh, it's not ready yet. We'll come back tomorrow. And they check every day to see if it's ready. So these are
Wow.
literally growing in their own habitat, which I think we call that wild harvested, right?
Right.
So
I think you're
their
right.
natural environment.
Very
And
biosustainable, right?
correct. Yeah. And we don't ever pick more than 20% from a plant because we want the plant to thrive, right? We don't want to harm the plant. So once we pick about 20% of the buds off of a plant, we go to the next plant. And so we literally go from plant to plant. And so that's part of the experience of taking these practitioners is to go do that, to go up into the Alps and actually go pick. And I mean, I had one practitioner this year who's pretty big, well-known guy. And he said, this has changed me. He said, the air quality up here, he said, you can just feel the cleanliness and the life force in the air, let alone
Yeah.
with the plants. So it's pretty amazing.
So are there any side effects to taking these plant cells?
It's really odd. So because of the mechanisms of action, these don't have contraindications like adult plants. So there are only
Mhm.
two plants in all the ones that we have that have any type of contraindication, and that's maidenhair tree and white willow. And that's because they have a propensity to thin the blood. So if you're on a blood thinner, I would don't take either one of those two plants. Pick a different plant that you're looking for. So pick periwinkle if you're looking for brain detox. So those are the only two. And then if you're pregnant, I would say don't take raspberry because we know raspberry is a woman's plant. But if you're pregnant, you don't want to be taking that. And that's it. So those are the only three contraindications out of all of the plants that have any issues whatsoever.
So you can take these plant stem cells along with any medications you might be taking.
Absolutely. Yeah, they really play well with other supplements. They play well with even pharmaceuticals. I have a healing practice and I often have people say, "Oh, I'm on this statin, I'm on this blood pressure medicine, I'm on this blood thinner, I really want to get off." And you can take both at the same time. And then what happens is over time, they go back to their doctor and their doctor says, you don't need as much. Let's reduce your dose. And so, it's a
Uh,
very gentle process. I would never tell somebody, oh, just stop that and go on a plant stem cell. That'd be totally irresponsible. But I say, work
right.
with your doctor and take these simultaneously. Here's the science, have him read these articles. Take a copy of my book. I'll give you a copy and educate him and then work at the same time, and eventually they've all been able to get off of the pharmaceuticals that they wanted to get off of.
I think oftentimes people think it's either or. I either take the pharmaceuticals from my doctor or I go the natural route. And one of my big soapboxes is it's never either or.
It's a
Even
both
if you,
and.
right, even if you're taking the pharmaceuticals, you still have to eat every day. You still have to pick healthier options for your foods. You still have to live every day. You should still change your lifestyle to be more supportive of your body, whether or not you're taking the drug.
Absolutely. And I look at it, I went from Western kind of medicine to 100% Eastern medicine, and then the pendulum always comes back. And I'm a big proponent that these are all just a la carte options for us. And we've got to find the right ones for our bodies, the right diet. I was a huge proponent of keto for everybody. And then when I did my genetic testing, it's like, no, you should be eating Mediterranean. And I went, oh, well, that's why, this and this. Okay, that makes sense. Is
Yeah.
right. We're all genetically different. And so we've
Yes,
got to find, the right combination of remedies that work for each of us.
exactly. So, are there any places that restrict the sale of your plant stem cells?
No, we sell all over the world. Actually in South Africa and Australia. So we are mostly a practitioner company. Because of the documentary, we've had a lot more individuals come in. And so we have a sister site where we help them because, I do it to me, education is really important. Just an example, I had a practitioner reach out about 2 months ago and he said, hey, my 81-year-old mother is taking black poplar. It's a blood thinner. She's on blood thinners. Why did you recommend this plant? And I had my freak out moment and I said, black poplar is not a blood thinner. So I kind of went and did my research and I couldn't find anything on it. And then I reached out to our scientific director, who's a biochemist. He's got 18 million credentials after his name. And he got really upset. He said he's talking about an adult plant. And he said, yes, an adult plant can have that effect, but in the GMO world, it does not. And so, this guy, practitioner, referenced a book. He sent me a picture of a pretty well-known author who wrote about it. And so it was incorrect. And so we actually this past year held a biochemistry class to help practitioners understand the different mechanisms of action of the plant stem cells versus an adult plant, because adult plants do have contraindications, many, many more. You can look in any herbal book than what these, GMOs have.
Right, right. I find this whole stem cell um, modality very interesting and obviously very new. But it sounds like people have known about the plant stem cells for much longer than most of us have been aware.
Yeah, so I started going down that path with St. Hildegard of Bingen in 1158. And then for 800 years, you can't find any research, nothing. And then in
Uh-huh.
1958, Dr. Paul Henri, who was an MD and a homeopath, kind
Uh-huh.
of stumbled upon them. And what he found is, oh, wow, these are really cleaning up the liver. And I think he started with about 38 plants. So any book you find out there up until the last couple of years always talks about those 38 plants. And it's like they've taken it from the original and kind of passed it down.
Right, right.
So, my question when I came in 2019 was, well, if those plants do, why wouldn't other plants be able to do this too? Why wouldn't the buds of other plants, of other trees, also be able to do these things? And so, over the years, the science has continued to deepen that they don't just work on the liver, they actually work on the metabolic health, they work on the cellular health, they're working inside the tissue. And actually, they create a lot of softening of the tissue. Another thing I learned is that most illnesses are a starting point of stiffening of tissues in the body,
Mm-hmm.
like the arteries start to
Mm-hmm.
stiffen.
Oh. So I want to talk a little bit about inflammation with these plants. And I know that you look at inflammation as a signal, not the problem, which I do as well. And how do these plant remedies or these plant stem cells work with inflammation and keep it from coming back?
Yeah. So they are helping to, like I said, regulate that in the body. There is a great plant called black currant. If you go over to the
Uh-huh.
UK, there's black currant tea, black currant jelly. So in Europe, they seem to know a lot more about the health benefits of these. And that plant is the best plant for inflammation in the body, regardless of where it originates. So if you have inflammation in the gut, in the brain, in the tissue, the joints, it is the best plant and also happens to work on the adrenals, which tells me that there is an adrenal connection to inflammation. That's that fight or flight, which is raising cortisol, which is then raising inflammation in the body. So that is a plant I take regularly because I'm kind of that type A. I've tried to take it out, but it still shows up. I'm still kind of that go, go, go. And it's just a plant that helps keep that at bay. So, once the body regulates it, it learns from that. So, one of the questions I get asked is, oh, well, I have to take this forever. Well, if you don't change your behavior and you stay in fight or flight, yeah, you probably should. But if you get regulated and your nervous system has calmed down and the inflammation has calmed down, and you have practices now in your life that keep that, regulated, like meditation or walking or exercise or, mindful eating, whatever it is, then no, you don't need to because you've changed it in your system and the body will hold that. The body has the intelligence to hold that.
Let's talk a little bit more about detoxification and how important that is in the body and how these plant stem cells help with that.
Yeah, I think it's the most important place to start. And I just want to differentiate between drainage and detoxification because I believe there is a difference.
Yes.
Detoxification will come into the body and start to clean it up, and it can cause a Herxheimer reaction. A lot of people use binders. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And a
Okay.
binder can help pull things like if you're detoxing heavy metals, for example, a binder will help get that out of your body, but it's also pulling out some good stuff as well because it doesn't
Hmm.
differentiate. Drainage, what the plant stem cells do, they're known as drainage remedies. They actually, if let's say you're taking one for the liver and the liver is stagnant or congested and the toxicity can't get out of the body, it will then recruit the next organ. Let's say it's the colon or the kidneys. It will then go there. So you don't have that big Herxheimer reaction. And you don't need a
Hmm.
binder because of those carbon nanodots, which are literally funneling the toxic burden out of the organ. And so I've used these with 2-month olds. I've used them with animals. I've used them with 92-year-olds. I would say, in the last year, it's the first time I've ever had somebody be sensitive to these. So it tells me something in our environment has changed because I've been working with these since 2019. And for basically 6 years, I never had a single reaction from anybody. And so what I've done is I've adjusted and said, okay, let's start low and slow. So, you take a bottle like this, it's 50 milliliters. You take 2, 3 drops twice a day. That's it. You put it directly in your mouth, or if you don't like the taste, you can put it in a little water and drink it. And you will start to feel better. But you got to give it time, right? That's the other thing is we're a society of give me the quick fix. I have a headache. I'm going to go take an aspirin and my headache's gone in 30 minutes. That's not how
Hmm.
nature works. Nature says, well, the reason you have that headache is because you hadn't eaten all day, right? So let's address that and not the headache. And it will, kind of go find that balance. So it works on
Right.
the root cause, right? It's such an overuse
I
saying, but
know.
it's true. But it does. They go to the root of the problem, and they will resolve it over time. And so, if somebody's getting migraine headaches a lot, it could be a hormonal issue, right? It could be it could be so many things. And the plants
Hmm.
have that intelligence to know where to go in the body to clean it up. And so I think it's a really key differentiator than what we are so used to, which is just fix it, give me the quick fix. And like you said, you can get that and you can get better. But if you don't change your diet, whether you're taking a pharmaceutical or a natural remedy, and you don't change your diet, your diabetes will not go away.
Right.
You might keep it
Right.
at bay for a little while, but over time, the body will say, okay.
Have you looked at other plants in other parts of the world, like in the Amazon basin?
We haven't yet, just, we've been pretty busy with what we're doing right now.
Right.
But it's something on my radar. We still have one more episode that we're going to film. Um, well, you know Mary Agnes from my show.
Yes.
Yeah, so she
Yes.
was our filmmaker, and she was kind of the brilliance behind all this of getting it out there. But yes, I mean, I every time I see a plant, I ask it. I have this kind of weird, unique gift. I can channel the plants, so I can sit with a plant and just sit still, and it will tell me what it does. And so when I find a new plant that I don't know what it is, I'll research it. What do you do? Tell me about you, and then I'll actually go look it up. So yes, I could probably add 500 new plants, and my husband, who manages the SKUs, says, please, no more. Balance.
Right, right, right. Great. Is there anything else that you would like people to know before we start to wrap this up and tell people more about where they can find you?
Yeah, I think two things. There is a really great book called The Last Child in the Woods. The author is Richard Love. And one of the things he talks about is two concepts. One is called nature deficit disorder, and the other
Uh-huh.
one is nature knowledge deficit. And the nature deficit disorder is that we have become so disconnected from nature. And nature is an inherent part of, I mean, we are nature, it's an inherent part of who we are. And that he talks about a lot of our illnesses are because of that disconnect. And I know in my personal life, that was absolutely true. I was not outside much. I was inside in a corporate, office. And I think people are now waking up to that fact that, oh my gosh, we've got to get out in nature, and nature heals. Just standing in a forest, right? In Japan, they called it
Right,
forest bathing, and
right,
doctors are writing prescriptions to lower blood pressure and anxiety. Go into the forest for an hour every day.
right.
So that's one is, just telling people how important nature is in our lives. And then the other one, this knowledge deficit disorder, is to be curious. That's about the fact that we don't know where our food comes from anymore. We've lost our connection to what we're putting in our bodies. And North America is really the main continent that can eat whatever we want, whenever we want. So if we want strawberries in November, we eat strawberries in November. When you go to Europe, you only get what's in season, right? So our circadian rhythms are off. And, be curious. Like when you go to the grocery store, look at the food and say, oh my gosh, this comes from Brazil. Is this really what I want to put in my body? I was just
Mhm.
listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and this guy was saying, like, nobody should eat bananas because, unless you're in the tropics, you should not be, your body does not know how to break it down. So I think even a lot of our illnesses and our inflammation is from just some of those simple things that we've lost that connection to nature and that wisdom, that knowledge that our ancestors had. They
Yeah,
grew their own food, and they picked their own food, and they ate their own food. And, I encourage people to do that. If you can create, you can container garden if you live in an apartment. So many things we can do to come back to
right.
that
Now,
wholeness.
now there's hydroponic gardens you can just have on your
Exactly.
patio.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's so many things we can be doing to get more connected.
Yes. Such great advice. I really appreciate that. Okay, so where can people find you? We've
Yeah.
kind of talked about it
So,
before, but let's repeat.
yep. So nature-provides.com. There's a lot of information. That's where the documentary is. You can find my book there or on Amazon. It's called Ancient Plant Wisdom. And then the last thing is I have a podcast also, which I'd love to have you on.
Would love it.
It's called the Wellness Sherpa. And so that's the other place people can find me.
Fantastic. Well, Jen, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will have learned something absolutely new that they maybe have never even thought about before. So thank you.
You are so welcome. Such a joy.
I will look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Inflammation Investigator. So I will see you then. And that's another case filed on the Inflammation Investigator. Remember, every symptom is your body's way of communicating. We just need to learn the language. If today's episode sparked something for you, I want to hear about it. Share your own investigation discoveries with me on social media at Elizabeth Yarnell, or find me at elizabethyarnell.com. Your experience could be exactly what another listener needs to hear. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And here's the thing about investigations. They work best when you're not going it alone. If this podcast is helping you uncover the answers you've been searching for, please like, rate, subscribe, and review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. As a new podcast, these actions mean more than you know. Want to dive deeper into your own inflammation investigation? Head over to inflammationinvestigator.com, where you can take my free inflammation quiz to uncover which hidden triggers might be affecting your health. Until next time, this is Elizabeth Yarnell, your inflammation investigator, reminding you that the solutions to your health issues are out there. Let's find them together.